The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Open line on Mannin Line through till 1 o'clock today. Text, email, call and WhatsApp. If you have anything to comment regarding this motion of no confidence, it's been tabled against the Chief Minister for debate next week's House of Keys sitting, that is. Any thoughts on that? Is it going to go anywhere? Is it a fuss about nothing, or is it a kind of shaking of the timbers? What about it? Albury Castle, Tannamaloo MHK. Tim Glover says he wants to represent his constituents. He says they're not happy. Mr. Glover says he doesn't have a name, really, for who should replace Mr. Cannon in the top job. Any thoughts on this? Is it the time to be doing it? Do you think he's doing it for the best reason? Is there a reason behind it? And if anywhere other than here isn't a destination, I mean, it's the equivalent of the old mystery tours that used to take off by the Crescent Cinema. Do you remember those? If you don't have somebody who's ready to do it, is it worth doing this? Anyway, this is what Tim Glover had to say.
Well, I said in an interview with Manx Radio last week, I felt the time was right. And I think I used the phrase, we need to lance the boil. Laurie Hooper, I heard on Sunday, made reference to he believes there should be a vote of no confidence. There have been lots of chat, and there are a number of backbenchers who are unhappy. And as I said last week, we've got 5 ex-ministers on the backbenchers. The time is now. We've only got 2 years to go. So if a change is going to be made, it needs to be made now.
And you need 13 votes, Tim. Are you confident you'll have that?
No, I'm not. There's a lot of discussion still taking place, but I think we need to address the issue, and whichever way it comes out, move forward. I could have, as I said in the email, which has been leaked to you very quickly, it seems, I did say that I could have used standing orders to bring it tomorrow, but I didn't feel that was right because there are certainly a couple of ministers I'm aware that are away and have leave of absence, and I think we need to have the whole House there to do it fairly and properly, and that the way I'm doing it does give members now the full time to prepare ahead of the sitting, to make their points and what their worries might be as well, and it's just a better way of doing it.
Now, when we're talking about no confidence, Tim, is it the MHKs you think that have no confidence in the Chief Minister right now, or is it the public, or is it both?
There are MHKs that certainly have lost confidence, but it is also to address widespread discontent out in the public. And the point I've made before is we are representatives of the people, and if the people aren't happy, well, we need to represent those people.
Who do you think would be a worthy replacement for Alfred Cannon?
And that's something I think at another date we need to address, but at the moment we're tied with what we have and the procedures that we have, but I think a wider look at the whole system needs to follow as well.
Well, there you are. You need 13 of the 24. Albury Castle, Tannamaloo, Jason Morehouse and Tim Glover, Aaron Michael, Mr. Cannon and Tim Johnson. In Douglas Central, Ann Corlett and Chris Thomas. Douglas East is Joni Farragher and Claire Barber. In Douglas North, David Ashford and John Wallenberg. In Douglas South, Claire Christian and Sarah Maltby. In Garth, Daphne Kane and Andrew Smith. Glen Faber and Peel is Kate Lord Brennan and Tim Crookall. In Middle, Jane Paul Wilson and Stu Peters. In Onken, Julie Edge and Rob Callister. In Ramsey, Dr. Allinson and Laurie Hooper. And in Rushen, Juan Watterson and Michelle Hayward. 13 of those need to vote, and all eyes will be on the House of Keys next Tuesday. But I just will be interested to know what your gut reaction is when you heard that was going to happen. Did it feel right to you? Does it feel the right thing to do? What are we, 3 years into this Tynwald. Anyway, any thoughts on this? Text, email, call, WhatsApp. Obviously, everything is a straw poll. Everything is completely unscientific. But I'd be interested to know what you have. I've got no confidence in doctors. Different doctors for different appointments. They don't help, says Maxwell. All right, we get the point. Let's not pretend everything is perfect. It's not, but this is pathetic, says 623. I really wonder what the Arbury MHK thinks he's achieving. No solutions, just sniping from the sidelines, says James. And thanks also to Tim Glover's got my full support, says 502, calling for a vote of no confidence. I only wish voters had a say in it too, because my straw poll suggests he'd be out of the door in a flash. Well, as you say, voters don't have a say. We have a say every 5 years. Any thoughts on this? I mean, governments have been unpopular in the past. MHKs have been unpopular. Chief ministers have been unpopular, and particularly after 3 years when ministers have been sacked or moved on to other things. So they will be unpopular. Mr. Cannon was at pains to point out yesterday he wants to move past personalities and get on with the job itself. Do you think sometimes we just get a bit kind of obsessed with personalities? I mean, personalities are terrific. We're all human beings, and we identify with other people's strengths and weaknesses and foibles. There's no chance at all of Tim Glover's attempt being successful. He refers to 5 ex-ministers being on the backbenchers. Not even all of those will support the move. Can only assume it's the start of Mr. Glover's election campaign. Doesn't add anything. This is just uncertainty. Thank you for that. And we've got some notes. I just want to say I went along to the Max Utilities consultation session in Castletown on Saturday. I live very close to Erie Stane, and I was vehemently opposed to the scheme. But now I've found out more, says 623. Seen the videos of what the wind turbines will look like from the various vantage points, I've completely changed my mind. I think, Jan, says the benefits far outweigh the disadvantages, and I can see that those who oppose it are acting in self-interest. Those who shout loudest may get heard. The protesters are peddling just half a story. Have you seen this Erie Stane development? Have you been along to the kind of road shows that they're putting on? Just wonder what you think of it. It looks like Douglas Corporation's got a lot of staff down on the prom cleaning up after the storm. Bring back the groynes, says 470. We never ever get a message. It seems like Douglas Council has no real policy regarding the groynes, whether or not they're going to be put. If you don't know what the groyne is, by the way, and some people get the wrong idea, they're the wooden fences, if you like, those low wooden fences, sometimes not so low, that used to stretch out from the head of the beach down a couple of 100 yards or more. And they used to mitigate the tide and the waves. And since they've gone, now some people say it makes absolutely no difference and what will happen, but other people maintain that the groynes did mitigate the effect of the tides and washing the sand up. But anyway, this is 470. Wants the groynes back. I'd like to say congratulations to Tim Glover, says Ian. Tim Glover saying what a large number of people outside of government are saying. I support his motion. Thank you, Ian. That's Ian on 817. And another person saying, no chance of... some of these are coming through doubled up. Let's not pretend everything is perfect. Yes, James, we've seen that one, but I'll bring on Eddie with us now. Hi, Eddie.
Hi, Andy. All right, mate?
Very good. What a lovely day.
It's fabulous getting some jobs done outside. Lovely. I want to talk about the wind farm, if possible.
Yeah.
I've been to every one of the meetings up to now, which has happened, and I'll be going again today and tomorrow, so on. And I come to the sort of conclusion that even the Wardle people themselves are sort of bewildered why we're not looking at alternatives. And they don't seem to give me any clear answers to a lot of the questions I've asked, and I've lined up question after question after question, and I've had no straight, decent answers. So yesterday I watched the second, or I think it's the second video that Paul Burgess has put out, and it swayed me totally, 100%. I think we should actually put a halt to the madness that's going on with this wind farm for one, but also more important is the net zero. It is not going to work. It is absolutely a waste of time doing it all, and we're going to go backwards. You know, the suggestion which Paul Burgess had yesterday is something that I would push forward myself, and that is none of the people from Wardell that I've spoke to up to now seem an expert in any way whatsoever. But there is one person who is the world leader in this, and he's at Edinburgh University. So why don't we do like we did on the promenade? Let's halt the thing until we know exactly where we're going, because we haven't got a clue on this wind farm at the moment. There's up to now there's 33 reasons that it shouldn't go ahead through planning. I mean, when I spoke to him yesterday about the flood not potentials, I said, because I didn't realise you were chopping the whole forest down, but they've agreed that they are going to cut the whole forest down. I've spoke to a geologist across, and they have said if you cut the whole forest down, that is, all those roots will no longer be a sponge, a holding point, and you dig away thousands of tons of peat again. So what's going to happen to the water that flows straight off the mountain at that point? Yesterday, some of them suggested it will go into either Silverburn or the Colby Glen River. Again, that is going to cause probably about 30% minimum more water, but it will come all at once. So therefore, we've got high flood risks on both sides of the equation there.
But, I mean, Eddie, the government has set out its own net zero plan. It's the Island Plan, they say, for outlining the action for the Isle of Man to stay on track to reach net zero. It was approved in October 2022, and it basically, this is government policy. It's obviously backed by resources. They got plans for it all. The emissions, the blue carbon project, energy generation, heating systems, people not being able to put in fossil fuel heaters in new builds and things like that. So, I take your point. I take your point, and I understand your opinion, but you seem to be pushing water uphill. This is a government plan. It's policy.
Yeah, well, it wants changing, and that's probably why we're getting a no confidence at the moment. It wants changing. In my opinion, we should do what I said, put it on hold, and we should actually forget about this net zero, because there's so many people in the world who are saying at the moment there is no problem with the climate. The CO2 levels have never been so low. Things like that. Let's find out. Let's not rush into things like lemmings. Let's just stop, hold, and do more into it. I mean, I know for a fact, excuse me, it's taken up over 2 years of my time because I'm writing a firing line of it all. So I've started learning about it and everything. And to me, it's an absolute no-go. But what is a go is we should, just like Prince William has said, we should look after our environment. In my opinion, we should make the Isle of Man a national park, totally, and then none of this horrible nastiness that they want to do to it will happen. It's just a no-go from that minute on, and we'll look for alternatives. I mean, I spoke to one of the Wardell Armstrong fellas, and he is totally agreeing with me about hydro and the sea, the marine and hydro. He said between the two of them, you could have independence in the Isle of Man. We wouldn't have to worry about gas, nuclear, anything. But we've got to halt everything and learn more about it. That is, I've said that right from the beginning, haven't I? That we seem to be one track at the moment.
So what do you think the chances are, Eddie? I mean, we hear your point. We hear, obviously, you're very involved in this because it could be very close to you. But, I mean, what do you think the chances are of the government basically backtracking on this policy of getting to net zero by 2030, the interim target in 2030?
Well, it's going to be hard for this government because they've shown us that they're one-track minded, but hence, at the moment, you've got a no confidence. So if they do lose the government, and a new government is reinstated, somebody else comes in. I mean, if they can't find anybody, I'll bloody stand it. All you need is a bit of common sense. But nothing is going right at the moment, and this mistake that the government made won't be the 80-90 million pound like the sea terminal in Liverpool. This one will be billions.
Okay, right. You're against the onshore. Then what about Ørsted and this giant offshore farm off the east coast? How do you feel about that?
I'm against that as well. I mean, I've seen all the simulations on that. I've also seen the damage that it's doing to the sea. And I'm surprised the likes of Michelle Hayward isn't going up in arms about this, because the sea is her speciality. Now, if we're going to pollute the sea left, right and centre with all that lot down there, then it's an obvious no-go. But like I said before, even the Wardell Armstrong man said to me that if he was anything to do with it whatsoever, because he wants feedback from all of us. That's what they're here for. And he would actually look at the water, hydro and marine. It is environmentally friendly all round, and it also gives us the most important thing, which is independence, because it would be ours.
Okay. So anyway, let's say this once and for all. If the wind turbines were anywhere else on the Isle of Man, obviously the possibility is they will be very close to you. If they were anywhere else, would you be as against it?
Let's put it this way. They're not going to be just by me. I won't be just a NIMBY down here. There'll be NIMBYs all over the Isle of Man, because the long-term project of this, if wind goes ahead, the likes of Mike Profit and so and all the rogues that we know about in the past will all jump on the same bandwagon, and the Isle of Man will be covered in wind turbines, and it will be such a sad day. Okay,
all right, Eddie, thanks for that. Obviously, that's your opinion, and we take that as such, but we appreciate you calling in. Maybe before asking for Alf's head, metaphorically, Timmy, the Boyle Lancing Glover, could furnish us with his own achievements over the past 5 years, says Frankie. And 942 says, if Tim Glover loses the vote, will he resign? You could always ask. Why does Julie Edge keep asking the Chief Minister about getting a statue of Sir Mark Cavendish installed? We don't have the money to pay for a statue when we can't afford to maintain the roads properly or fund Manx care. Secondly, Mark Cavendish doesn't live on the Isle of Man any longer. Who's going to pay for the statue, and why doesn't Julie Edge focus on the real issues on the Isle of Man? It's the second time she's asked about this. Well, the Bee Gees don't live on the Isle of Man, but their statue is really, really popular. I mean, whenever you see anybody from across weekends, they're all having their photos taken with the Bee Gees. So a statue of Mark Cavendish? A big no to the wind farm. If they go ahead with it, I'll open up a candle shop, says Jeff. Offshore wind farms look great from Peel, says Des. Well, you couldn't see it, could you? Oh, I see. Your caller obviously had a different conversation to the chap I spoke to from Wardell Armstrong. Those opposing this scheme are coming out with nonsense. That's 623's view. The scheme will benefit the whole Isle of Man, never mind a handful of people who don't want their views spoiled, says 623. Why are MHKs insistent on spending money on fripperies? I would not be opposed to this idea if we had spare cash, except we don't. Which fripperies are we talking about, 636? is this gentleman suggesting we stop cutting down trees for the flood risk? Maybe they should put that to the Forestry Board and worry more about the 300,000 ash trees that are coming down before that small thicket in the south says, well, they're coming down because they're diseased. Let's face it, Rich, not by choice. And the message in the general consensus from the electorate, says 109, is that this administration has run its course. Well, that's your view anyway, 109. I think this administration is out of ideas and obviously out of its depth. Unfortunately, not one of our politicians will stand for Chief Minister, which will result in Mr. Cannon retaining his position despite his unelected personal manifesto. Well, we all know how the situation works on the Isle of Man. It's a mistake to look at the Isle of Man through anybody else's eyes. The way that Tynwald works is the way that it works. We don't have party politics to any great extent. There are just, obviously, Mr. Hooper is a member of Liberal Mannin. There are 2 members of the Manx Labour Party in Keys, but everyone else is independent. If anything, with nobody prepared to stand and be counted, the process will only enamour the Chief Minister's position, and we'll get more of the same. This is from 109. Anonymous 109. Why has Manx Care been allowed to overspend against their agreed budget and to put the care system at the risk of financial default? Someone must be responsible. By default, we now look as though we'll restrict access to health services, even though we've already suffered tax and national insurance rises to fund the budget. Okay, Anonymous, thanks for that. So where do we go from here? You pointed out what you think. What do you think? What do you think we should actually do about it? Right, let's get to the lines in a moment.
Spice up your week when you join the Curry Club on the Dining Car. Running on selected Fridays throughout the season, gather family and friends to enjoy a rainbow of spices in a range of authentic homemade curries and a delicious selection of desserts on the return journey. It's a great experience for all curry lovers. For more information, visit rail.im or call 697 457.
Quality economy, that's what we're all about.
Imagine relaxing in your new luxury bathroom with the latest bathroom suite, or how about a stunning wet room with contemporary designer tiles? Turn your dreams into reality at a price you can afford at Pacesetter. Visit the Pacesetter Bathroom and Tile Showroom, Harris Terrace.
That's what we're all about.
The Isle of Man has one of the best available wind resources in Europe. Manx Utilities wants to hear from you about the proposed Cavendish onshore wind farm project, an exciting new initiative designed to harness our natural resources, which could generate more than a quarter of the island's electricity needs. Please join us at one of our 8 public consultations running this October. It's your chance to engage, ask questions, experience the VR simulation and meet our team. For details, visit manxutilities.im.
Foot or leg problems? Then contact Pop Podiatry, where all services are carried out by an HCPC registered and qualified podiatrist using the latest clinically backed treatments and devices, including the new Swiss Shockwave high-powered laser treatment for tendinopathies, plus nail surgery, verruca treatment and more. Conveniently based at the Nunnery in Douglas, see what Pop Podiatry can do to help you. For your free assessment, book online today. Get back on your feet soon with poppodiatry.com.
When you think about our emergency services, what do you usually picture? How often would you think of the people answering our 999 calls? I'm Amy Griffiths, and on this week's Island Life, we're marking International Control Room Week, celebrating all our operators who help us here. You can listen today from 5:30 here on Manx Radio, with a podcast available shortly after broadcast.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
Eric's on now. Hi, Eric.
Hello, Andy. Thanks for taking the call. I just wanted to put my point of view in relation to the proposed wind farms. Every sympathy with the people who are sympathetic to the landscape and the natural environment of the Isle of Man, I really am. However, needs must where the devil rides. The global geopolitical situation is pretty dire at the moment, and it's probably not going to get any better. The main players have their hands on the last of the natural resources, the oil and gas. Russia is constricting its pipeline of gas to Europe. The Middle East, it's becoming more and more difficult and dangerous to get oil out of that area. Everyone's making a land grab for what is left of the resources that remain in the ground. Tactically, for the Isle of Man, having some alternative to fossil fuels is a matter of life or death, really. And that sounds a little dramatic. However, obviously, without power now, we are nothing. Those who oppose wind power generation or other forms of renewable energy generation, whatever that might be, have to consider a life where they don't use electricity, they don't have access to the internet, their lights go off, they can't charge their cars, everything that power means to us in the modern world. We're facing, obviously, having that taken away from us. And if the Isle of Man isn't forward-thinking and protects our own interests by coming up with alternatives, when the countries of the world end up fighting over the last bottle of Wicked or the last barrel of oil, then we're going to be in a pretty sorry state of affairs.
How do you respond to the people who say, Eric, we've heard all, harem scarum before, back in the 1970s when the Middle East kind of exploded and when the cost of oil shot up, it was going to be the end of the world. But the world seems to just adapt to things. So how do you respond to people who would just say, look, this is anybody who's peddling this is just really making money for themselves. So the wind farm industry is industry. That's going to make money, obviously. And the net zero renewable industry is that. It's an industry. So really, it's just we're swapping the fossil fuel industry for another industry. In the end, the people always pay.
They do, and the cost will always fall on the lowest in society, and that is what needs to be addressed. Those countries that still have access to fossil fuels, however they try to hold on to that, manage the cost. The rest of the world, sadly, it's purely economics and greed, will end up paying more. I don't particularly want to see wind farms on the landscape of the Isle of Man. I'd rather see it, as your previous caller suggested, under the sea. But obviously there is a cost in environmental terms to that as well. I'm not generally a pessimist in life, but you only have to turn on the daily news to see how bad the situation is getting all over the world. And rightly or wrongly, most of this bother is being caused by two things, either religion or natural resources, or one is being used as an excuse against the other and vice versa in order to have some form of control over these things.
Why do you think there's no race for nuclear power?
As it stands, it has such a bad rep, but I am aware of small nuclear reactors which are now apparently clean. Yes, that is another way the Isle of Man could go, have a limitless source of power, and you would hope that things were a lot safer and more easily dealt with when they expired than it was 30 or 40 years ago when you had the nuclear power stations, Windscale, Sellafield and the likes of that. So yeah, it's something that I haven't considered, I haven't looked into. I'm just suggesting that those who are against this preservation, I think, of the society in which we live, we cannot live without power, and it just can't be done anymore. We used to light candles and cook toast on the fire. Most houses don't even have access to a fire. Without power, we're basically in quite a dire situation. So I just kind of hope people will sort of think about that a little bit and weigh that against their opinions, against the environment and the view from their front door. So
okay, I appreciate that, Eric. Thanks for calling today.
All right, thanks, Sam. Bye-bye.
Good to hear from you. 24 minutes before 1. Julian's on now. Hi, Julian.
Hi, Andy. Just listening to texter 623, was it, saying they're swayed to this and not your previous caller. You've got to think about certain things, though. Like, for example, they say about could power certain number of households, but what they do is they don't tell you is that's not all the households at full power. They take a rule of thumb that they're going to do a small percentage because not everyone's at home, not everybody needs to have the oven on at the same time. So it's a fraction of the households. And households are only 20% of our energy needs because there's things like, imagine the hospital, what kind of electricity that takes, heating and warming and doing all the lights and the operations, or perhaps Ronaldsway with all their big CNCs running that take huge amounts of power.
And also the e-gaming companies with their data centres.
Absolutely, which takes probably more than all the households if you actually looked into it, because they have to have liquid cooling. They're running so hot, the back of them where the fins are. And if it's such a dire thing and we must have electricity and we must have energy, why is it that Kroger wasn't examined and has been basically sleptwalked for 6 years? Because the seismics that were even done back in BP's time, you're looking at 1 trillion cubic feet of gas, which will probably last us if we just kept it to ourselves, which is another option. I mean, everyone says, oh, well, you have to do it on the international markets. Well, why don't we just employ a company to get it to shore here? I mean, you could run it from Macclesfield straight down the coast. You wouldn't even need to come ashore, and then run the pipe straight into Douglas to the power station. So, or just to to Battery Pier area. Why can't we just do that? If we've got hundreds of years worth of gas right off Macclesfield and all the latest drilling techniques for geothermal, I'd like a second opinion on David Quirk's assertion, we can't do that. It hasn't stopped any other of the 1,000 geothermal projects they're drilling through lava and all sorts to get to where they need to be. So I find it hard to believe that it's technically impossible to get geothermal done. Where there's a will, there's a way, Andy.
But all this comes back to politics and money, doesn't it? And the government's got this net zero target, it's got net zero policy, and presumably in politics it's better sometimes to have a rifle than a blunderbuss. You need a sniper, you need to aim at one thing and do it. Otherwise you end up spending money on things that may not happen. And presumably the government's conclusion is they don't have the money and they don't have the time because, they're strapping us into this net zero target in 2030.
So meanwhile, you can barely keep the staff paid at the Southern Swimming Pool. You can barely keep Manx Care running, but you can find north of 220 million for an interconnector that will shackle us to the UK that's almost at blackouts and load sharing like South Africa. You're going to spend, it's already doubled how much this wind farm is. Originally with the selling point was 23, now it's 40. Well, if we do anything like the ferry terminal, that'll be 100 million north. So you've got 220 million for an interconnector, which they say they have to do because they're not doing gas anymore, like Eric just said before. So we're getting on for $500 million. Where's that 500 million coming from?
And at the end of it all, remember, we have to pay the bills. We have to pay the 29p per kilowatt hour, and so does industry with variations and discounts and what have you. But it would just be nice to know how much we're going to pay in the end, because I just contend that is most lay people, most ordinary people's concern is, how much is the bill going to be?
Yeah, and we hear callers say, there's loads of wind turbines in the UK, and there are. There's almost 12,000 of the blooming things, according to the Wind Consortium. So why have they just put the price of electricity up? Please tell me.
Okay, all right, got to go. Julian, thanks for calling today.
Thanks, Andy. Cheers.
Good to hear from you. Mr. Glover was asked what he'd like to, what he would like to see changed to make things better. Typical politician, he didn't have the answer. Surely Mr. Cannon is just the scapegoat, says Phil.
Hi, I'm John McGuinness, just wishing Manx Radio a happy 60th birthday.
Oh, blowing a hoolie out there.
Come in for a bravig by the fire.
Just stocked up at Hearth. Never been so warm.
Who's that? Hearth?
Aye, they've got kiln-dried hardwood for me log burner, Colombian coal and smokeless ovals for the open fire, kindling and firelighters, all delivered. Great value too.
All goes up the chimney anyway, so I pay more. I'll be giving Hearth a call.
Check their website as well. Just order and they deliver.
For all your fire fuel needs, call Hearth on 560 577 or visit hearth.co.com.
Walk through the Christmas Wonderland at Ramsey Garden Centre for a magical range of trees, decoration, unique gifts and much more, including the widest range of indoor and outdoor lights. Come down for our festive launch this Thursday, 6 p.m. to 9.
Spectrum Windows. If your house needs a new look and your windows letting rain, keep those cold breezes out and make it look like new again. Spectrum Windows, Spectrum Windows. Quality through and through. Great work guaranteed to you. Spectrum Windows, Spectrum Windows. Spectrum Windows.
Q Plus is much more than a plumbing and heating trade counter. Come and explore the largest bathroom showroom on the island, where we're always updating our displays and stocking the latest bathroom designs and trends to make sure we have just what you're looking for. Visit Q Plus on Snugborough Trading Estate or find us on Facebook to see some fabulous bathroom inspiration.
Qplus.co.im. Coming up, we have another winning weekend here on Manx Radio. This time, we're giving you the chance to win a 5-foot real Christmas tree and a set of multicolour lights from Ramsey Garden Centre. The team there are launching their Christmas decoration extravaganza this week, and with a winter wonderland of decorations and gift ideas, they're open 7 days a week, so you can shop whenever it suits you. To win, all you have to do is listen out for our winning question, which we'll ask on air right across the weekend. And once you've heard it, text your answer to 166 177. Make this your winning weekend with Ramsey Garden Centre and your nation station, Manx Radio.
The Mannin Line with Andy Wint.
And thank you to 113 who tell me they'll be home in 10 minutes. I think you've texted the wrong person. A message in just says, from Mark, the global population is stabilising. In 100 years at most, the global population will be shrinking. This will reduce consumption, reduce emissions, reduce the need for housing and food. All we have to do is work with it. We just need to restore nature as we reduce our footprint. And if you're in the south, by the way, the chair of Castletown Commissioners says she feels she's the target of a social media witch hunt. It's over moves to ban cars from Castletown Square all year round. After a unanimous vote a year ago, the commissioners applied to the Department for Infrastructure, but they're still waiting for a response. Beth Cannon says using parks further away from the square would help trade. If you're in the south and you use Castletown, do you like everything being funneled through that tiny gap into the car park at the back of by the Garrison, by the old grammar school, isn't it? Do you think they should open Castletown Square? That is. Anyway, back to the lines. And Bonzo. Hello, Bonzo.
Hello, yes. Going back to the Chief Minister, I could talk about renewables and stuff, but we need an entire programme to actually counter much of the disinformation which has been pushed out lately. Yes, Alf Cannon. A man who has risen greatly beyond his ability, and we are paying the price for it today. You only see how little influence he has by looking at the various publicity that's coming out from his visit to the Labour Party conference, where the only people he could get to talk to him were the Mayor of Liverpool and a most junior Minister for Paperclips. He has no access to the UK government at all at the moment. Perhaps unsurprising given his unwavering support for the previous administrations, and of course his support for the previous Tory administrations is reflected in the way that he's acted in his way throughout his term in Tynwald. Of course, let's remember he has inherited a political career from his father, He only really has to turn up on on the ballot paper in Aaron Michael as it is now, or Michael as it was then.
Do you not think that's an insult to the constituents of Aaron Michael? Surely they're bright enough to know what's what.
Well, for the majority, for those that vote for Alf, that is because he serves their interests. In that he serves the interests of those who are predominantly in the top 20% of incomes, and certainly the interests of those who we would call the very rich. He is very much an advocate of what I and others have termed the welfare state, where we have a taxation system whereby the burden of tax has to fall on those who can least afford it, and money has to be essentially given to wealthy people to stay here. His reign as Treasury Minister has also shown that kind of thinking, and indeed into Chief Minister. I mean, he talks as well about some of the problems of cost control in government and such like. Well, what was he doing for 5 years at Treasury? Twiddling his thumbs.
Do you think? What do you think of this motion of no confidence?
Well, the thing is, he will win it because that's the way that things are weighted. He's got 8 votes from Comyn, and he only needs 13. So, that and a few of his sympathisers, he's over the line. But from what I'm hearing, about a third of Keys would vote against. And that would make his position quite untenable. Sir John would be calling him in for a chat and recommending him to consider his position.
So where's this going to take the Isle of Man, though? Because he himself, I mentioned before, is wanting the personalities taken out of this, and the fact that policy and the government's agenda needs to be adhered to, and one of those is fiscal prudence.
Well, that's pretty laughable, as I say, because he was in charge of finance for 5 years for a start. So the history of a lack of fiscal prudence is one he can talk to himself in the mirror about. And as for, trying to get away from personalities, he's the biggest, most egotistical personality in Tynwald.
Well, I've never really met a politician that doesn't have an ego, but I do see your point.
Oh, yes. It's absolutely ludicrous, but he simply does not really have the capabilities in order to be able to lead a government. He's only there because other people who would have been more competent did not wish to stand. And the only reason that he wasn't chief minister in the administration before was because everyone banded together for anyone but Alf vote, which ended up with Howard Quayle. So I don't think Mr. Cannon has any positive or redeeming qualities to cite of him being having the capabilities to be a chief minister or indeed a minister of any form.
So where do we go from here, Bonzo? What do we do?
Well, hopefully the vote will produce a situation where Cannon's position is untenable, and he will go. And then we will have, I can think of a couple of people, but I won't name the names at the moment, who would then be able to take over as chief minister and produce a sensible round of policy which could then be implemented quickly instead of the complete excuse of the island plan. 3 years now it's been going, and what has happened? He talks of action. What progress? None. Because he and others are incapable of making decisions. They're absolutely decision averse. And if you are a leader, you need to lead. But leading does require consent, and it does require appreciation of those whom you lead, and not throwing tantrums and being the definition of an underconfident, low-ability subaltern every time anyone disagrees with you.
Okay. Our system and COMIN relies on consensus. And that's been displayed many times before. Are you suggesting that Mr. Cannon can't command consensus in COMIN?
Well, he can't command. In order to command consensus, you have to display some form of leadership, and in order to display some form of leadership, you actually have to have some appreciation of what it is you're supposed to be doing, and he doesn't have that. He likes standing around and preening himself, but when it comes to actually having any intellectual or political substance, he has none.
Okay. All right. I just had a couple of messages in, Bonzo. Say like, you have something personal against Mr. Cannon. Is this personal, or is this just a political opinion?
It's political opinion. It's a professional opinion. Because I have worked with ministers in the UK, and I can tell you, although the quality of them have gone down sort of quite markedly over the years, but certainly in my time, Alf would be pushed to get on a town council.
All right, appreciate it, Bonzo. Thanks for calling today.
Okay, thanks.
7 minutes for one. Nikola Tesla had free electricity 100 years ago. If nobody's interested in investing in that, says Des, no, everything's about money. We're a business. Everything's a business. The world is a business. So nothing is going to happen unless somebody can make some money somewhere. And in the world of net zero, there's money, big money, in things like wind farms, renewables, solar panels. The Chinese are making the money on the solar panels. So we're replacing, it is a new industrial revolution. We're replacing oil and gas and coal. Coal's gone now, oil and gas are diminishing. So we're in this new industrial revolution where wind power and renewables will take over. We have to get used to it. No doubt years and years ago, people were terrified of the fact that there'd be internal combustion engine cars. Everybody relied on horses. And cars were a bit frightening. Electricity was frightening in the beginning. Most people had oil lamps. We're going to have to adjust ourselves to the new reality of the future. Trouble is, at the moment, we don't quite know what the reality is. I know somebody who happily lives without electricity, says David H., and they constantly get threatened by the TV license people. They love sending those letters out, don't they, the TV license people, the ones that say, an investigation has been opened. Let's all accept, says Wayne, we don't have a voice at the end of the day. It's the Department of Home Affairs who own the government. The last time I've seen people outside the House of Keys was about 20 years ago, so everybody needs to get together and speak up. Otherwise, it's whipped under the carpet, says Wayne. Like our choices complaints, we should have no wind farms. It's causing world mayhem. It's not very helpful. Thank you, Wayne. It's good to hear from you. I live in Peel, so, says Bill, I can't be described as a NIMBY. I'm a retired chartered civil engineer, and the main problem with the proposed onshore project is that the numbers given simply don't add up. I'm not totally against wind generation, but put it offshore, not on the Isle of Man, which just happens to be a UNESCO biosphere, says Bill. We've heard that it won't affect our biosphere status. It's just that they never say it very often, do they? That it won't. If we're the only nation to be a nation to be an entire biosphere, sticking up onshore wind farms, won't that affect it? Or and particularly won't it affect the wildlife? Again, we never really get definitive answers from people. You always feel like sometimes there's always an agenda floating around. In response to Eric, there is zero wind as we speak at the onshore wind farm site. So zero wind, zero electricity. So why not geothermal? It does work, and it's not as expensive as wind. As it stands at the moment, though, nobody is putting their money where their mouth is for geothermal. Costs money. Do you think the government should stump up for it? Can you imagine taking that as a proposal? Dear Mr. Cannon, we'd like £2 million to do a test borehole. Any idea where that letter would go in the in-tray? The wind farm could produce up to a quarter of our power needs, so where's the rest coming from, says Jay. Well, Chief Constable's on Mannin Line next week. If you want to get a question in beforehand, call the answer phone on 682-631 or email manninline@manxradio.com. That's it. Back tomorrow with another open line. Thanks to Chris Quirk on the phones today. Lovely day. Enjoy it.
WINT